Greetings, Culturians, and welcome back to the channel. I think we are headed into a full Marvel week. A lot of bad news, that is, a Doomsday Doom kind of a week that we're going to have to talk about, because between the two, possibly three upcoming films that round out what we know as the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we're coming to the end of something and the beginning of something else. Trevor Denning over at That Park Place outlines that we're about to see an Antman character die off screen because it's more expedient for Marvel. It may actually be beneficial for the actress involved, but at the same time, it's just maybe not exactly the way you want to go out. And with that, we've got to jump into this story, so here we go. Ant-Man actor killed off screen. Yeah. Before Avengers Doomsday, I think a lot of them are going to be killed off screen. I think this was, for lack of a better way of saying it, predictable. They have a lot of superfluous characters. They have a lot of audience not fan favorites that, you know, have been shoved in at the last minute that maybe don't need to be there. I would suggest that, you know, Captain America 4 was an example of shoving a actor and a formerly beloved character into a different role, making them from Falcon to Captain America, which probably led to the film's massive failure. But at the same time, they're forcing in characters nobody wants. Nobody wanted the Thunderbolts in any of the forms that, well, they were displayed, and especially not in the cinematic film that we received last year. It was one of the 3 Marvel flops that released in just that short period of time. From Phase 4 on, they really haven't had a substantial winner unless you count what Sony was able to do, or the rated R version of Deadpool and Wolverine. Outside of that, it kind of was a disaster from A to Z, and as my English friends would say, saw it off. And I agree. But let's jump into this particular story, because I think, again, Trevor nailed it. Even with the massive cast assembled for Avengers Doomsday, it was inevitable that not every major character would return, and some would argue most of them are pretty minor now. Last March, during Marvel's live cast reveal stream, several notable names were missing. Well, actually, an entire row of chairs were missing, because we have more people for more casting announcements in the future. That we'll talk about another time. But among those not mentioned was Evangeline Lilly, who played Hope Van Dyne as Wasp, which I thought was interesting and an excellent choice for that particular character, and she played it to the bone. But according to the X account for the Beyond Reporter, her character will die off screen. Now, to say that you're not surprised would be probably accurate. If you've read any of the recent reporting, she had an accident, an injury, a brain injury, and a traumatic one at that recently. And as somebody who's been through a health scare myself, I can understand why she would step away. But she's also revealed the fact that she has some severe deficits, which you can read in the story here or in the statement she originally made to Variety. She has no contractual obligations to Marvel any longer, and she's devoting her time to writing and humanitarian work, which she has kind of already done. And yet, in a recorded video on January 1st, which was posted on social media, she revealed that recent scans show that almost every area of her brain is functioning at a decreased capacity, meaning she's got a lot of deficits. And given the timing of events, it's unclear if directors Joe and Anthony Russo had originally intended for Wasp to appear in Doomsday. My guess is, since it was largely unscripted and still shot anyway, they kind of just fed in people they thought would draw in an audience and not necessarily planned anything, including what people would actually say. Not every character in the film was revealed last spring, and regardless, the decision to have Wasp die rather than recast the character is a choice that will likely divide fans, which they already did by not recasting Chadwick Boseman in, well, the place of the Black Panther. They've tried a Black Panther movie without Black Panther, just like trying a Captain America movie without a Captain America, and you end up with underperformance and maybe a shell of what used to exist, which basically could be said for the entirety of Marvel at this point, but set all of that aside. Recasting versus replacing characters in the MCU. In its nearly over 2 decades now, the first and most notable example of anybody being replaced was Don Cheadle. He took over the role of Colonel James Rhodey, otherwise known as War Machine. He took that over from Terrence Howard, who, if you remember in the first film, kind of seemed like built for that particular role. And he was. And had things not happened because of the show that he was involved in, he probably would have got a better exit. But setting that aside, he didn't jive with being paid less on the set of the original Iron Man, thinking that he had more star power at the time and more earning potential than even the character Robert Downey Jr. played as Tony Stark, thinking that he would get a bigger role and a bigger paycheck, kind of became the dividing point for Disney and, of course, Terrence Howard. And hence, we ended up with a new Rhodey. And I'm going to say, I really do feel like Don Cheadle did that a huge service and kind of performed in a way that, well, beat all expectations. Other examples exist, but they're pretty rare. In fact, after Chadwick Boseman's death, which I already mentioned back in 2020, Marvel decided to have the character die off screen. This seems to be the way that things are likely to go, since we're going to have so many characters in this upcoming film, and so many of them not represented in it. It's possible that Hope Van Dyne may die before the events of Doomsday, should Marvel decide to make a 4th Antman movie. A new character could take over as the Wasp, maybe even the daughter character. But as things are currently structured and as they stand, the only Ant-Man character confirmed for Doomsday is Paul Rudd's Scott Lang. And I'm not sure how integral he's going to be to the story. It feels like he did all he could in the last few films, and going into Endgame, he was mostly done and over. And I'm not sure that Ant-Man and Wasp Quantumania would suggest otherwise, because if you look at it, that performance was, well, god-awful. Regardless, there are uncertain fates for many other heroes out there. For example, Hulk, Hawkeye, Captain Marvel, any of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Some of these characters are going to maybe be held in reserve for Avengers Secret Wars, but if we get to the battle planet aspect of what looks like the direction that they're going, I'm not even sure that that would happen, with the exception of the Hulk. And again, it just depends on the direction that Marvel wants to go. Every character's fate going into Doomsday and after is kind of uncertain. Whether or not they die in the first few minutes, which it's been suggested that Cyclops may not be around very long. And the fact that, well, we've seen the 2 old dudes from X-Men die multiple times, and especially Mr. or Professor X. I really don't see that anybody's screen time is going to be, well, any more than 2 or 3 minutes. There just isn't time, and you're going to have to focus on the story and the fan favorites to have anybody feel like this was a satisfying effort. Regardless, it does truly look like the lovely Evangeline Lilly is out and likely to be killed off screen before we even see the movie. The events of the day will speak for themselves, but what do you think? Let me know. Do you think that Wasp will no longer be a part of Avengers going into the last 3 films, or do you think that there's a chance she may make a comeback? Do you think that perhaps Scott Lang's time will be limited as well? Or do you think that he might be a bigger part of this than anybody would suspect? Again, if you have any comments going into Doomsday, let me know those thoughts in the comments section below. And while you're down there, hit the thumbs up button, double check you're still subscribed. And until next time, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and until next time, see ya.